In this anime, the rank 1 soldier discovers that he has the most insane power of all time. It turns out that in this world, monsters come from portals to try to wipe out humanity, and some humans are strong enough to fight these monsters. This anime follows the life of Yaito Sumireiji, who after many years of training can finally join the monster suppression army. His friend Nagi says that they will have a simulation battle to see their skill level, and the two quickly start a battle in which Yui ends up winning. At that moment, an alarm rings to announce the inauguration ceremony, and on the way to the ceremony, a report on the television talks about Yui, saying that he is the heir to a super important family in society and his brother held a super important position in the army. However, despite Yui being from a noble family, he had a very weak level of psychic power. After being publicly humiliated and called weak on national television, Nagi tries to cheer up his friend, saying that they are now part of the army and so they will finally get a girlfriend, so they shouldn't worry about anything. However, suddenly, a warning about an attack in the city alerts everyone, but faced with the power of one of the strongest men in the military force, the monsters are easily defeated, and this man is the army's major, named Karen, a name that doesn't suit him at all. Suddenly, another creature appears, but this creature is quickly destroyed by a powerful ice attack, and the man responsible for this attack is another major, named Spring. And seeing the level of power of these two, Yui and Nagi wonder if they will be able to kill monsters with such ease too. Later, the enlistment ceremony finally begins, and excited, Nagi reveals that he has two extremely beautiful girls who will be joining with them. These girls are Naomi and Kanaz, and seeing that Naomi is looking back, Nagi greets her, hoping to get her number. However, Kanaz says that Naomi shouldn't pay attention to an idiot like Nagi, and in response, Naomi says that she wasn't looking at Nagi but at Yui. At that moment, Yui's brother, named Kaido, arrives at the enlistment room to congratulate those who were called up for already being naturally strong. He also thanks the effort of those who applied and managed to enter the special force due to their effort. Kaido then says that until today the origin of the creatures was a mystery, and all the special force knows is that these creatures come from the sky through portals. Because of this, Kaido states that everyone must be strong enough to defeat the creatures, and at that moment, a note is showing each one's rank arrives for all the candidates, and because they are weak, Nagi and Yui end up getting the position of soldier. Everyone celebrates, and when he sees Naomi, Nagi says he wants to talk to her, but he decides to leave and do some research with Yui about her and Kanaz. When he sees the data, Nagi discovers that Naomi was from an extremely famous family, and he also discovers that Kanaz was Naomi's adopted sister, since during her childhood, Kanaz lost her entire blood family to monsters. Having said that, Nagi reveals that Naomi and Kanaz were in the elite position among the strongest cadets. Nagi then makes it clear that he would marry Naomi, and that because of that, Yui should try to marry Kanaz. He's very smart. Back in the locker room, Naomi says she's happy Kanaz is better, since earlier Kanaz was having trouble with strange visions about a parallel world. Have you always wanted to draw your favorite anime characters but think you don't have the talent? Here on our channel we have the perfect solution for you. We've formed an exclusive partnership to teach you all how to draw anime quickly and easily. Even if you think you don't have the talent for it, you will learn from Noah Williams, one of the greatest experts in the world of anime. Drawing anime has never been so simple, and it doesn't matter if you are a beginner or already have some experience. From the first class you will see the results, you will learn very quickly. The link will be in the video description, and only you can access and learn today. Reflecting on this, Naomi wonders if it was because of her powers. Kanaz says she doesn't care, since she just wants to know if she's in the same platoon as Naomi. Meanwhile, Nagi asks Yui if he remembers the person who rescued him when he was a child. Yui says he doesn't know, and reveals that not even Kaido knows. At that moment, a friend of Yui's appears and introduces herself as Hanabi. Yui decides to ask why he hadn't seen Hanabi at any point during training. Hanabi tells him she was summoned, since she's not useless in front of him. With that said, the three of them go to the platoon room, and there, their captain, named Sito, tells them that the Special Forces equipment shares everyone's power with each other to defeat the creatures more effectively. That said, Sito reveals that his pistionic ability was electricity, and asks all the soldiers to introduce themselves in the same way. Hanabi then shows her fire ability, Nagi shows his wind ability, and Yui then shows that his ability is to control objects. In response, the veteran named Tsukumi tries to explain her power, but because she has difficulty speaking, the man with the ability to become invisible named Kagiro reveals that her ability is clear evidence, and upon seeing Yui, Kagiro says that he is a celebrity, and that one day he will be famous just like Yui. Out of nowhere, an alarm goes off to warn of the attack of the creatures, and because of this, Sito interrupts the meeting to begin the mission to exterminate these creatures. On the way, a boy named Wataru says that he is the guy who provides support for the platoons, and excited for his first mission, Nagi tells Wataru that he is ready to kill any creature that appears in front of him. However, Wataru says that Nagi and Yui are still too weak, and that's why they should stay behind to provide support. This way, a fight with the creatures begins, and seeing Kana's fighting style, Nagi says that she is incredible, and that she must be the strongest among the summon. Out of nowhere, a warning shows Yui that a child is in danger, and because of that, Yui decides to go with Nagi to save the child. However, when they arrive at the place, a creature appears in front of them, and despite being scared at first, Yui decides that he would have to deal with that situation. So, he uses his telekinesis to throw iron blocks at the creature, knocking it down. Thanks to this, he manages to catch the child. However, the monster quickly gets up and attacks Nagi. Seeing this, Yui uses the trash can to attract the monster's attention, and while he's running, Nagi is saved by Naomi, who reveals that she has the ability to predict the future, and so she claims that they got out of there alive. On Yui's side, he ends up reaching a dead end, and so he tries to fight the creature. However, he ends up tripping, and before he dies, Kana saves him by throwing pieces of metal at the creature. Having done this, Kana says that Yui should try harder, and hearing this, he uses all his strength to throw a giant block at the creature, and thanks to this, he manages to kill the monster once and for all. For some reason, when looking at Kana's, Yui remembers a lost memory of his. However, he doesn't say anything, and suddenly, some flying cameras appear to say that the great hero of that day was Yui, and to avoid bad gossip, two elite soldiers appear and use their abilities to disappear from the media's sight. In another location, the soldier named Lucas says that 2 soldiers had died on that mission, and he also reveals that these creatures feed on human brains. This makes Yui reflect on the mysteries that these creatures hide, and he wonders if he will ever know the whole truth. Then, from afar, Major Karen says that that world is rotten, and because of that, it was time to change things completely. And remembering that memory with Kana's again, Yui wonders how it was possible that he had seen Kana's as an adult while he was still a child, since they are both the same age. Kana's has dreams about the parallel world again, and when she wakes up she comes across Naomi, who says that the two of them should go to the Lucky Festival on the street with Nagi. Yui reveals to his friend that he believes that the one who saved him when he was little was Kana's, but Nagi says that that is impossible since Kana's is the same age as them. He then says that Yui was probably saved by a woman who looks a lot like Kana's. Meanwhile, Naomi thanks Kana's for accompanying her on the trip to the event, and while Naomi thanks him, an announcement on the television shows that in this world everyone has psionic powers, but only those with really strong psionic powers can join the special force. Having said that, Yui and Nagi arrive at the Sumireiji family museum, and this museum only exists because 2,000 years ago, a man named Yakumo Sumireiji became a legend for being extremely powerful, and because of these feats, there is a museum to honor him. Upon seeing this, Nagi asks Yui if he isn't excited to have such a powerful ancestor, but Yui says that maybe these feats aren't even real, and that's why he was so interested in finding out his fortune at a fortune teller booth. Upon arriving at the stall, Yui comes across Kana's and Naomi, and taking the opportunity, Yui asks Kana's if she has any distant relatives who look like her. However, Kana's refuses, and to change the subject, Nagi says that they should buy the fortune paper as soon as possible. Having said that, everyone makes the same purchase, and in the end they all receive the news that they will have great bad luck in their lives. However, unlike everyone else, Naomi receives an extremely lucky paper, and feeling sorry for her friends, she gathers and ties everyone's papers together, and says that this way everyone will have a little bit of a chance. In another place, Kaido reports to the head of the Sumireiji family about the cases of creatures and regions that have never been attacked before. In addition, he says that a special enemy force was making strange movements, and that they were probably orchestrating something. In response, the leader of the Sumireiji clan tells Kaido to increase the city's security, and before Kaido leaves, the leader of the Sumireiji clan asks him how Yui is doing in the special forces. In response, Kaido says that Yui is slowly improving, and that since he is Yui's brother, he can't keep a close eye on him, as that would somehow give him an advantage. Suddenly, Yui wakes up in a completely random place, and wonders how he got there. Kaido then tells him that they are there for a team battle, which is a simple training between platoons, and the rules are extremely simple, since one of them only needs to get the flag to win the challenge. Having said that, Kaido notices that someone is missing, and when he looks far away, he finds Erasure sleeping. Upon seeing this, Yui says that he thought Erasure was someone extremely responsible, because she is a very famous person. However, Hanabi says that Erasure was only pretending on TV, and that she was usually always asleep. Having said that, Kaido finally starts the battle, and before everyone goes to their positions, Naomi wishes Yui good luck, and reveals her expectations that he will achieve great things. Upon seeing this scene, Kanaz asks Naomi if she was in love with Yui, and in response, Naomi admits that she is extremely in love with Yui, and because of this Kanaz decides that she will face him to see if he is worthy of her or not. Thus, everyone starts to battle, and using her superior telekinesis skills, Kanaz easily pressures Yui. But just as she was about to defeat Yui once and for all, the training ends, since thanks to Erasure, Kanaz's squad had lost. Kanaz says that despite having lost, Yui managed to fight very well. However, she makes it clear that this is still not enough for her to approve of him. Yui obviously doesn't understand anything. He doesn't even know that there's a girl crazy about him. At that moment, Yui receives a call from the head of the Sumireiji family, who in this case is his father. His father then says that now that he has joined the military, he has become a real man, and so his father proposes that they have a celebratory lunch. Kagero was watching Yui from afar, with a very strange expression, and upon seeing this, Tsugumi says that he was very different from normal. Suddenly an alarm goes off, and Ataro warns that a large number of creatures were invading a certain location. Upon hearing this, 2 platoons quickly go to the location of the creatures, and there, an exorbitant number of creatures appear to attack the platoons. To make matters worse, the signal between Ataro and the platoons ends up dropping, and soon after, several monsters begin to fall from the sky heading towards the soldiers. Seeing seeing this happening, Yui's group decides to distance themselves and look for a better location. Luckily, they end up finding Kanaz's group. At that moment, several rocks fall, separating Naomi and Nagi from the others. Not only that, but an extremely large creature appears, and only with the efforts of Yui and Kanaz, this monster is defeated. Meanwhile, Nagi and Naomi are cornered by several monsters, and seeing that these two could die at any moment, Kanaz proposes that everyone use their special cables, since these cables had the ability to increase the use of powers. By using this, the group manages to break the rock that was in the way, and Yui and the others quickly kill the creatures. And relieved, Kanaz goes towards Naomi to hug her. However, at that exact moment, Naomi has a vision of the future in which Kanaz would be killed, and before the mysterious sniper shoots Kanaz, Naomi throws herself in front of him and ends up taking the shot instead. Because of that shot, a transformation happens to Naomi. At that moment, Kanaz remembers the day she arrived at Naomi's family's house and how well she was treated by her, and seeing her sister transform into a giant monster, Kanaz is completely devastated. The monster quickly attacks Kanaz and goes after everyone, and upon seeing Naomi in that monstrous form, Nagi is completely paralyzed. And before Naomi can kill Nagi, Yui decides to face the monster, and seeing that Yui has enough power to kill the monster, Kanaz stands in front of the creature and tries to stop it. But two soldiers appear out of nowhere and teleport the monster to another place. At that moment, Major Sprint appears and reveals that he will take Naomi to a special place, and seeing that Kanaz would try to face the soldiers, Major Karen uses his power to knock her down with a single blow. At that moment, Yui sees some strange items on the ground. Now it is too late, and everyone is depressed over the loss of Naomi. But some, including the shitter, say that it is normal for soldiers to die, and so the others should not be lamenting. General Spring talks to Kaido alone and reveals that he will make all the soldiers keep quiet about what happened to Naomi. Then, even later, Kanaz receives a call from her adoptive mother, who reveals that she is extremely disappointed in her, since protecting Naomi was her duty, and she was not even able to do that. Upon hearing this, Kanaz once again has memories of the parallel world, so she decides to report what happened to Naomi. But Karen interrupts Kanaz, saying that she shouldn't report this to anyone because he knows where Naomi is. But she can't be rescued at the moment, since even if they manage to get Naomi from that group, Naomi would eventually end up being killed for being a monster. So they can only do this after she is transformed back into a human. Kanaz asks why she should trust Karen, and in response he says that she shouldn't trust anyone, but she shouldn't worry about him exactly, but rather about a group called Siren. After this crazy conversation without any solution, time passes and we see Yui training when he remembers what happened to Naomi. At that moment, Kanaz arrives and reveals that she knows where Naomi is, but she can't act now. In response, Yui shows the fragments he had found on the floor the day Naomi turned into a monster, and since these fragments were from Siren, Yui deduces that they had done this to Naomi. Kanaz remembers that she had already seen these fragments in her house, and so she was going to research them. Yui then says that he had not heard from Nagi since he was hospitalized. Commander Sito then goes to talk to the two of them and asks if Kanaz was okay, since when a soldier is unwell he ends up disturbing the others in the platoon. In response, Kanaz says that she would stay strong and that she would not die until she finally saved Naomi. Out of nowhere, a warning about several creatures appears on the army computer. Because of this, Karen and Spring decide to gather all the platoons for an extremely important meeting. One of the platoon leaders, named Jinma, goes alone since he had received a specific mission from Karen, and upon seeing this, Kagero smiles, showing that he knows something. Having said that, everyone arrives at the place, and there, Nagi arrives last, surprising everyone. Yui asks how he is, since he saw Naomi turning into a monster, and that traumatized him a lot. But Nagi says he doesn't know anything about it, and says that unfortunately Naomi had just died, and that he wouldn't be discouraged because of that. Upon hearing this, Yui realizes that something had happened to Nagi, and at that same moment Kanaz starts to feel sick and have a kind of connection with a parallel world. The other soldiers then ask why no monsters had appeared until now, and just as Sito is about to ask Ataro this, the signal is completely cut off. Suddenly, Sito's group is completely surrounded by Gemma, who reveals that he knows that there are traitors in that group and that they were helping the new government to harm people. At that moment, Karen's brother, Lucas, appears and says that he will stop Gemma so that Sito's group can escape. Karen also appears and easily takes down Sito's entire platoon. Since unlike all Pisces, Karen had the rare ability to copy any power, and because of that he was known as the Brain Eater. Suddenly, Nagi starts to act strange and changes his personality completely. Gemma then accuses Sito of being allied with the government, and so an intense fight begins between them. Kagero says that he was not on anyone's side and uses his ability to become invisible to disappear, and Nagi, completely out of control, goes after Yui and Kanaz for no reason. Sito, while fighting Gemma, says that Gemma was completely wrong and that's why he'll have to be beaten until he returns to normal. Nagi then begins to fight fervently with Yui and Kanaz, and upon hearing that Naomi has turned into a monster, he says that he'll kill them all. This also causes him to awaken his latent power, and only Sito is able to stop this attack, but he ends up being hit by several wind projectiles from Nagi which were heading towards Yui. After stopping this attack, Sito throws himself towards Nagi and uses his electric power to knock Nagi out once and for all. Kanaz begins to remember the parallel world once again, and at that very moment a kind of holy hole appears in the ground, pulling several soldiers. Seeing that all the soldiers were in danger and that Karen was not caring about them, Gemma regrets it, and upon seeing Sito almost being sucked into this hole, he decides to help, and thanks to the help of the rest of Sito's team, he manages to save him. However, Yui and Kanaz are sucked into the hole, arriving in the parallel world where they come across several strange memories, but Kanaz is pulled by red ropes, and for some reason Yui manages to escape thanks to this, and upon seeing that Yui was fine, Gemma apologizes for having allied himself with Karen and says that he would not fight against them anymore. Back in the city, several people started losing signal, and while Yui bandaged Gemma, Tsugumi said she didn't understand how everyone was talking to Gemma normally, since it was because of him that all this had happened, and for these reasons, she couldn't forgive him. Gemma acknowledged his mistake and said he had done it because he had discovered that the government wanted to open a new type of government using the powers of the psionic. He said that every soldier who joins the psionic's military force has their power suppressed, since that way they can destroy the creatures while also reducing the damage. However, Gemma said that a part of the government was secretly brainwashing the soldiers, and that Nagi's loss of control was probably due to brainwashing as well. Having said that, Gemma said that he is currently 54 years old, and because of that, he would soon have to leave the army. However, before leaving, he intends to discover the truth about the military force and the experiments that are being carried out with the psionic. Gemma says that he thought that Sito was allied with the government, but now he knows that Sito would never do that, and that now he knows that Karen is hiding something. As he says this, a huge number of creatures invade the city, and looking at this terror, Spring asks why Karen did this. From afar, Karen says that he will finally have the thing he wants so much. In the parallel world, Kanaz wakes up, and when she gets up, she realizes that this parallel world is completely bizarre, and in a place very far from where Kanaz is, a mysterious man says that he is anxious to finally meet Kanaz. Several memories pass through Yui's head out of nowhere. He wakes up in the middle of a war without understanding anything, and is almost killed by a creature, but fortunately Hanabi saves him. Seeing all the destruction and war, Yui wonders what's going on, and to make matters worse, Hanabi says she can't contact Itaro at all. In response, Tsugumi says that the psionic system had crashed, and therefore it would be impossible to contact Itaro. But Yui manages to hear Itaro's voice, something completely unexplained, but Itaro reveals that he is using a telepathy ability to be able to talk to Yui. Itaro then says that he would try to recover the psionic system, but when looking outside the military base, Itaro realizes that the entire base was surrounded by the Siren military unit, and to make matters worse, a soldier finds him at that exact moment. In this situation, Itaro tells Yui that everything that was happening was probably because of a coup d'etat that Siren was trying to carry out, and that in order to help the population, Yui should kill as many creatures as possible. Having said that, Itaro's telepathy disappears, and after Yui reports on Siren's coup d'etat, Hanabi and Gemma notice that Karen was probably allied with them, and that because of this coup, Yui's father was in danger, since he is a very important politician. However, Yui begins to fight fervently with the monsters, and completely ignores his father's case. Kaido wonders the reason for this coup d'etat, and becomes extremely stressed knowing that his father was in danger. Yui continues fighting, and when he remembers how Karen was respected by the people, and how he was always willing to help, Yui becomes extremely angry, since because of Karen's actions, Nagi had gone mad. Yui begins to wonder if his father knew anything about this, when suddenly Tsaiga tells me that General Spring was near them. Spring quickly arrives, and quickly asks who Gemma and Yui's squad were serving. In response, Gemma reveals that he is not allied with Karen, and also says that Sito had disappeared. Upon understanding this, Spring decides that everyone will be part of his platoon, and that although he does not fully understand what was happening, he is willing to eliminate Karen and Sirin, since because of them, many innocent civilians are in danger. Spring then asks Yui and the others to check if the leader of the Samarajai clan and the other leaders of the current government are okay, since due to the disconnection, he no longer has any information about the leader of the Samarajai clan. At the military base, Kaido wonders why the Sirin army has not made any movement until now, and wonders what Karen really intends to do with all of this. From afar, Luca finds Yui's group, and seeing that colorless world, Hanabi says that a world like that would be very sad. In response, Suga tells me that all those without pistionic powers saw a world like that, and Luca says that all of this happens because of the Synod, which in this case is a system that connects the pistionic world with the minds of those who have pistionic abilities. Then Luca says that he doesn't know Karen's whereabouts, and that Kagairo and another platoon had completely disappeared. Meanwhile, for some reason, Yui remembers the moment when Kanaz had gone to a parallel world, but at that exact moment a message from Karen appears for everyone in the city. Karen then reveals that the current world is nothing more than a farce created by the government, since in the center of the city there is a super system that shares the brains of all citizens among themselves, and allows them to have the ability to see information without even needing any technology. However, according to Karen, the reality is that the government uses this system to manipulate humanity and experiment with the brains of civilians, which is why he was willing to end all this government power. At that moment, several creatures begin to attack Yui's group. Seeing this, Gemma and Hanabi tell Yui to go help her father as soon as possible, and quickly begin to fight against the creatures, while Yui quickly runs towards her father. On the way, a soldier was about to be killed by a creature, but Yui manages to use his power to save the soldier. And upon learning from the soldier that Sumeragi was in danger, Yui remembers the day he asked Sumeragi for permission to join the military force. At the time, Sumeragi said that he could not join the army since his pisthonic strength was extremely low, and therefore he would only hinder rather than help. Furthermore, Sumeragi said that his mother would not be happy to see him joining the military. And after remembering all of this, Yui says he doesn't care about the fact that his father is a politician or the fact that he denied his dream. For him, what matters is that despite everything, Sumeragi is still his father, and he even congratulated him when he enlisted in the army. So, after gathering all this motivation, even though he is extremely tired, Yui uses his little power to destroy more creatures, and in another place, Sumeragi is about to run away. But the creatures surround him and all the soldiers, killing several people, and Sumeragi alone is about to be killed by a giant creature that has just appeared in front of him. However, a mysterious person kills this monster, and the moment Yui arrives, he comes across Kanaz. When looking in front of Kanaz, Yui sees his father unconscious and realizes that Kanaz had stabbed him, and suddenly, Kanaz goes after Yui, without even saying a single word. And going back a little earlier, we see the moment when Kanaz woke up in the parallel world. There, she discovers that Yui had managed to leave the parallel world before even entering. Furthermore, she understands that Karen had really started a rebellion, and so she decides to return to the real world as quickly as possible. Thus, Kanaz's group begins to investigate that world, and realizes that they were supposedly in the center of the city, near where the super brain that connected all the Pisces minds is. When looking at the ground, Kanaz finds the same capsules that Yudo showed her the day Naomi turned into a monster, and when wondering why those capsules were there, Kanaz is quickly attacked by Karen, who thanks her for finally getting there. After saying this, Karen uses his power to copy Kanaz's ability and quickly runs away. After he does this, her entire group stands there without understanding anything, since even though Kanaz is quite strong, her power is not rare, and it was already an ability that Karen must have already had. Still not understanding anything, Kanaz's group leaves the building where they were, and on the way out they come across a mysterious man who suddenly attacks Kanaz. Seeing this, the entire group goes after the mysterious man. However, when they see an item that this man had in his possession, Kanaz realizes that this man is Yui. This makes Arashur realize that it really is Yui, and that he was blind. Furthermore, Arashur says that somehow they ended up in the future, and in response Yui says that they were 50 years in the future. Suddenly, Kanaz's entire group disappears, and Yui explains that all those who do not have the ability to travel through time return to their world at some point. Kanaz then asks why she didn't come back, and he explains that her ability isn't psychokinesic, but rather the ability to control spacetime. He reveals that the red threads that Kanaz always saw were actually her power. Continuing, Yui says that 50 years ago, Karen and Siren actually managed to conquer a strong opposition due to the death of the leader of the Samarajai clan, which for some reason was considered Kanaz's fault, and because of this opposition the world went to war and more wars, and to try to maintain some kind of peace, they placed Yui as a kind of hero who saved people. Meanwhile, the black hole in the sky grows bigger and bigger, and Yui explains that this black hole was created by him and Kanaz, since despite being weaker than Kanaz, his ability was also the control of spacetime, and because of the resonance he had with Kanaz on the day of Karen's attack, this hole ended up awakening. And what made this hole continue to exist was Yui's existence, since despite having a weak power, the resonance with Kanaz made him a kind of stabilizer for the black hole, and because he took too long to die, not even his death would stop the black hole from consuming the world now. Saying this, Yui says that Kanaz must kill him and his father, since it was true that his father was experimenting on people. He reveals that what happened to Naomi was also a test done by Yui's father. He eventually discovered this, and because of the war, he ended up using the capsules to create more monsters and increase his military power. Having said that, Yui reveals that now would be a great time to die, and asks Kanaz again to kill him once and for all in the past. Then several creatures massacre Yui, and because of this trauma, Kanaz is able to use her power to travel back in time to the present. Upon waking, Kanaz quickly goes to the city, where she sees the destruction that had occurred due to Karen's attack. Furthermore, she sees Kagero fighting some creatures and heading towards Samurai Jai, which makes her follow Kagero. Upon arriving at the location, Kanaz ends up being attacked by two creatures, but quickly manages to subdue both of them. However, when she reaches Samurai Jai, he has already been stabbed. Before he dies, Kanaz asks if it is true that he was doing experiments to study missions, and when she confirms that this is true, Kanaz understands that the Yudo from the future is really telling the truth. Thus, upon seeing Yui, Kanaz decides to try to kill him. However, the rest of Yui's group arrives at that exact moment, and taking advantage of the situation, Kagero whispers in Kanaz's ear that she should retreat. Because of this, she decides to run away, and when she tries to talk to Samurai Jai, Yui says that he will not die. However, on his deathbed, Yui's father says that his duty now is to change this world, and after saying this, he ends up dying. Shortly after, Kanaz meets with Kagero, and he says that he wasn't the one who killed Samurai Jai, but he also says that he doesn't intend to reveal his true intentions now. At that moment, Arish receives a telepathic message from Arish, and so she returns to the rest of Kagero's group. She then tells everything she had discovered about Yui from the future, and in response, everyone says that killing Yui Yui is absurd, but Karen appears, and while talking to Hanabi, Yui realizes that everything Karen had said about the government was true. And to make matters worse, Gemma tells her that Karen and most of Kanaz's platoon had allied themselves with Siren. At that moment, Kaido calls Yui and says that he needs him to become a hero. At the military base, Kaido says that most of the soldiers had joined Siren. In addition, the war had just started, and therefore, Yui would be the commander of the new army against Siren. Once again, several memories begin to appear in Yui's head, and suddenly, he wakes up in the middle of the city without understanding anything. He asks how he ended up there, but no one understands his question. At that moment, Luca appears and asks why Yaido was acting strange, saying that he is the commander and that he cannot keep acting like that. Yui wonders if he really is the commander, and seeing Yui's strange behavior, Gemma asks Ataro if something happened to Yui's head, but Ataro says that everything is normal inside and outside of Yui. Seeing this, Luca explains that Yaido had been chosen to be the commander of the new Kaido military force team, but for some reason Yui can't remember anything that happened, and because of that, Luca says that Yui should go to a doctor as soon as possible and do all the necessary tests. Hanabi then says that she was the niece of the doctor responsible for the soldiers, and so she could easily kill Yui, but Yui was their leader and therefore, only he could make the decision to go or not. Meanwhile, at the Siren base, Karen appoints Kanaz as the commander of the Siren army, and upon hearing this, Kanaz remembers the moment when Karen recruited her, since according to him, there was a way for Siren to save the creatures produced by the old government. Thus, Kanaz ended up accepting, and upon remembering this, Kagero is perplexed that the majority sided with Siren. In response, everyone says that they did not agree with the unforgivable experiments carried out by the former government, and that is why allying with Siren is the right thing to do. Kanaz is reflecting on her own, but Karen appears and says that she will be the heroine of the Siren army, since she had killed Sumeragi once and for all. Kanaz says that she did not kill anyone, but Karen asks if she is afraid of being the heroine that the world needs. Kanaz then says that Siren only wanted to use her, and asks where Naomi is, but Karen shows an image of the black hole that had become much larger than normal, and seeing this same image at the military base, Kaido says that it is possibly the greatest threat to humanity. Upon seeing this image, Kanaz remembers her conversation with the future Yui, and in response, Karen reveals that he knows that she had traveled to the future, and asks Kanaz about what she knows about the future and about him. In response, Kanaz says that the Karen from the future had copied her power. She asks Karen to tell her what he was hiding, since he could very well cure Naomi, but he hasn't done it yet and probably has his reason. Karen says that he doesn't know how to do it yet. However, Naomi along with other creatures were being researched in a facility at the Siren base, and according to Karen, Kanaz couldn't go to that base because it was too secret. Kanaz is obviously furious about this, and says that if necessary, she will kill Karen to save Naomi, but Erashur appears at that moment, and asks Kanaz to command the army, which makes Karen leave, and speaking alone with Kanaz, Erashur says that she will help her rescue Naomi, but Kanaz should not confront Karen, since that would make him afraid, and so he would keep an eye on her in every way. Having said that, Erashur reveals that she considers Kanaz a true friend, and so she will use her super speed powers to investigate the facility. Meanwhile, Yui consults with the doctor, and seeing Yui's data, the doctor reveals that there is nothing wrong with him, and that only some simple medicine can solve this problem. Yui leaves the room talking to Han Abe, and now he believes that he is feeling this way only because of the accumulated stress, and that this caused the psychic power to generate temporary confusion in the region of his brain, the region of the brain responsible for memory, and he is told that he will be fine with just medication, and when he sees that everyone on the patrol is there, he asks if his mission is over. Luca then reveals that they have already finished their work for the day, and that is why they came to check on Yui. Han Abe says that he shouldn't accumulate so much stress now that he is the commander, since everyone is there to help him. Hearing this, Yudo is happy, and looking at the TV, he sees a news story that said he was the great new hero of the city. However, when he sees the scenes of him fighting on television, Yui realizes that he had no memory of this, and to avoid him getting more stressed, Han Abe says that they should go for a walk to have some fun. At that moment, a strange woman enters the room, and Han Abe quickly goes to talk to her to try to help this woman. The woman then asks Han Abe to help her find the rooms, since she doesn't have Piscinean power, this woman couldn't even see the medical signs. Upon seeing this, Luca and Gemma say that everything in the world was made only to privileged Piscineans, and that this is extremely inhumane to normal people. After helping the woman, Han Abe sees two doctors taking Nagi to a strange room, and reports this to Yui's group. However, Ataro says that he can't find his exact location, because there is a certain information block in that place. Tsugumi decides to use her power, and says that Nagi had been put inside a van, and taken to a city that the creatures had destroyed many years ago. Han Abe then tells them that it was in this city that Yudo and his mother had been attacked when Yui was still a child. However, Yui reveals that he doesn't care, and that if it means saving Nagi, he will go there right away. So, they go there, and seeing that they would have to enter a mansion in a deserted place, Yui says that he was willing to do anything to save his friend. In another place, Kana's group is investigating the black hole, and analyzing the black hole, Kana's realizes that her resonance with Yui was getting stronger and stronger, and that's why she would have to kill Yui. Meanwhile, in the mansion that is actually a secret hospital, Yui finally enters there, but is quickly attacked by a creature, and when using his power, the black hole grows grows even bigger, and to make matters worse, Nagi appears out of nowhere. Upon seeing Yui's group, Nagi, acting like a madman, throws some projectiles in the direction of his best friend. However, he doesn't attack Yui, but rather a creature that was behind him. Then the doctors of this secret hospital activate an alarm to warn that Nagi had escaped, and in front of Yui, Nagi says that no one understood how he was feeling, since during the experiments the doctors messed with his brain several times, and the pain from these experiments is extremely agonizing. Magi says that Yui should leave this place immediately, and at that moment several creatures appear to try to kill everyone. Seeing this, Nagi says that he will buy time for their group to get out of there, and although Yui wants to help him, he tells his friend that if he does that, he will only have to suffer the same fate as him. So, Nagi pushes Yui away, and seeing the dangerous situation they were in, Luca uses his teleportation power to get Yui out of there. Nagi then begins to fight all the creatures, while asking for forgiveness for abandoning all his friends. Once outside, Yui asks why Luca had done that. In response, Luca says that he only prioritized saving the group, since unlike Nagi, who was a research subject for those doctors, they could all still be saved. Having said that, several creatures appear to try to kill Yui's group, and inside the hospital, the doctors are extremely happy with Nagi's performance, and say that this proves that the experiment to make the psionics stronger was working. And while Yui tries to escape in every way, Nagi continues to be tortured by the doctors, who don't even see him as a human being. After that, Yui finally manages to reach the military base safely, and in a phone call, Springer reveals that the state was now watching them, and that they could probably be attacked at any moment. Springer then reveals that the state brainwashes those who tried to expose the rottenness of society, and that this only happened to Nagi because he tried to testify that Naomi had been transformed into a creature instead of just lying, saying that she was killed in combat. Springer says that he managed to protect Yui's group at the time, but Nagi had already been captured, and so Yui could blame him for this failure. In response, Yui says that this is not Springer's fault, but the government. Springer then says that the hospital has always studied how to increase psionic abilities, and that because of this they ended up creating two products. The first product brainwashed psionic, and the second transformed any creature with a brain into a monster like Naomi. Having said that, Springer explains that he can't stay on the phone any longer, and so he hangs up. And then, Luca explains that Springer was once married to the daughter of the experiment director, and that one day this woman ended up being transformed into a creature by accident on a mission. Luca then says that it was after this that Springer and Karen discovered all the government's dirty dealings, and that both Yui's father and Kaido were probably always aware of the experiment. So, Springer talks to Kaido, and in front of Springer, Kaido says that Yui's soldiers would end up dying if they continued investigating what they shouldn't. Kanaz was about to invade the laboratory where Naomi was. He asks for the help of her entire team, so they finally enter the laboratory, and there, Arishu uses his hacking skills to easily crack the password and invade the laboratory. Kanaz enters a kind of warehouse, and opens a mysterious suitcase, where she notices that inside the suitcase were the projectiles that were used to transform Naomi into a monster. Arishu then uses his hacking skills again to try to locate Naomi. However, out of nowhere, a creature attacks the group, and since the creature is extremely strong, the group decides to retreat before something worse happens. The group then enters a mysterious hallway, and seeing a painting, Kanaz realizes that Naomi was in some room in that hallway. Suddenly, Kanaz receives a telepathic message from Naomi, and upon entering the room where Naomi was, Kanaz finds her transforming into a hideous creature. However, Naomi was able to speak through telepathy, and thanks to this, she apologizes for having left Kanaz, and the rest of the group worried. Naomi says that she was only able to communicate because of some special medication, and because this effect was almost over, Naomi was about to lose consciousness, and so she almost goes after Kanaz. However, Karen appears at that moment, and thanks to the medication he applied, Naomi ends up calming down. Karen then says that there was a way to bring Naomi back, but he would need Kanaz's power, and reveals that only she is capable of doing it at the moment. Karen then shows the medication that makes Naomi calm down, and says that it is made with a special material, and at that moment Yui is greeted by Spring, who says that he managed to fool Kaido for a while. Having said that, a soldier gives Yui a medicine that the doctor had prescribed, and when he sees that the medicine is the projectiles that make people transform into creatures, Yui is perplexed. After that, we see Yui with his team, saying that he is feeling a little better, and that if necessary, he would use the medicine prescribed by the government hospital. In response, Lucas says that Yui could only take the medicine in an emergency situation, and while the group is walking to check out a military base of the Syrian group, Yui starts to feel sick again, and almost faints. Gemma then explains that the place where they are is already completely empty, and says that it will be very difficult to fulfill the mission that Spring gave them, and at that moment Yui remembers this mission, since during a meeting Spring revealed that he and Karen had the same goal, to put an end to the rotten experiments that were happening. However, unlike Karen, Spring believes that there is a peaceful way to do this without causing complete chaos, so Spring mentions that they need more information about the secret research locations, since that way they could expose everything to the world and completely break the current government. Upon hearing this, Yui says that he could talk to Kaido to try to help Spring, but Lucas says that Kaido would never be willing to betray the government, and this makes Yui extremely angry, and says that he has to help the world somehow, since he doesn't want anyone else to go through what Naomi Naomi and Nagi went through. In response, Spring says that he can't put Yui on this mission because he is a platoon commander. However, everyone on Yui's team says that they will be by his side no matter what, and so Spring allows Yui to collaborate on this mission. So, we return to the present where Yui's group is in that desert place in Surin, and there they are attacked by a group of monsters. Yui tries to use his power, but he feels an extremely painful headache and falls to the ground. His group quickly helps him, and to try to prevent them from being killed, Gemma places Yui in a corner of the wall while he and the others fight the creatures. However, a creature appears in front of Yui, and before anything worse could happen, Yui decides to use the hospital's medication. By using this medication, he becomes fast and strong to the point of being able to kill all the creatures easily. Upon seeing the results of this medicine, Luca and Hanabi say that now they can trust that this medicine is really safe. Tsugumi then notices that there are 2 trucks heading towards a remote city, and knowing this, Gemma says that their next mission should follow these trucks. Then they arrive at the military base where the truck entered, and with the help of Luca and his teleportation power, they manage to get a briefcase that was inside this truck. And opening this briefcase, everyone is horrified by the fact that it contains a human brain. So, they decide to invade the base, and on the way they meet a scientist. But thanks to Luca and Tsugumi's skills, they manage to infiltrate without being noticed. Inside the facility, the group discovers a series of cases with human brains, and upon seeing a specific case, Yui is horrified to see that the medications were made using these human brains. Gemma then realizes that these medications were made by the Spring family's industry, and at that moment an alarm goes off to warn of the invasion by Yui and the others. Upon hearing this alarm, Kanaz says that she will stop Yui from getting in the way of her plans because her biggest dream is to save Naomi, and because of that, she and her entire team surround their group. Kanaz then claims to know that in that place, medications were made from human brains, and she found out about this thanks to Karen, who told her that these medications were being used to create a super powerful creature that wanted to decide the course of the war. However, Karen makes it clear that he was just deceiving Surin, and that he intended to use these medicines to save all the humans who had been transformed into creatures. After revealing this, Kanaz decides that killing Yudo is really the best option, and so she goes after him without any mercy. However, Yui is now much stronger and can fight on equal terms with her, but Eri sure ends up helping Yui escape, and she states that they cannot try to kill Yui without really being sure. At that moment, Kanaz receives a message from Naomi, and so she goes to Naomi's room. There, Kanaz's best friend reveals that she discovered that the medicines she uses are made from human brains, and because she is using these medicines, she is no different from any monster. Naomi says that she would rather be dead, and upon hearing this, Kanaz starts to cry and leaves. In another location, Yui thanks everyone for helping him save himself, and seeing that the fake medicines with human brains were from the Spring family, Yui and everyone else begin to wonder if Spring was really worth trusting. However, at that exact moment, Spring appears and reveals that he managed to report the experiments at that institute without suffering any consequences, since in addition to being a member of the Spring family, which gives him certain privileges, he was also one of the founders of the institute along with Karen. At the military base, Kaido discovers that Yui was responsible for the growth of the black hole, and back at Yui, he is talking to Spring. The man then explains that they, along with Karen, created that institute just to try to save his wife. However, the scientists ended up using that place to commit all sorts of human atrocities, and to fix this, Spring explains that there was a way to reveal more government information to the population. He says that Nagi's memories had been stolen and kept at a military base where there was concrete evidence of the drugs that transform humans into creatures, and because of that, Yui prepares to enter that base. Yui then says that Hanabi didn't need to participate in this mission since her family could also be in this space since they are government scientists. However, Hanabi says that she will continue on this mission regardless of whether her family is involved or not, and she says that justice should be served as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Karen meets with the Ken Asia group and says that they can't let Yui escape like they did last time, since if they do that, Siren could take drastic measures and ruin his entire plan to save humanity. Elsewhere, Kaido is alone watching some videos of Yui. He says that he needs to make sure Yui is saved by any means, and to do that, he asks one of his soldiers to summon Yui immediately, but the soldier says that he wasn't able to access Yui's brain waves, so he could send a message, and upon learning this, Kaido realizes that the reason behind all of this was because Spring was betraying him. Yui continues to advance into the military base, and there he comes across Nagi, who this time has been brainwashed much more severely. While Nagi is about to attack Yui, Spring is surrounded by Kaido's soldiers, accused of treason. Nagi then starts a fight with Yui's group, and because he is extremely powerful, Nagi manages to beat the entire group with great ease. Seeing this, Yui tries to use his power, but the symptoms in his head return, and before he can even try to use his power, he ends up fainting. Taking advantage of the situation, Nagi uses Yudo as a hostage to force the rest of the group to surrender. Meanwhile, Kanaz's group confirms that it was indeed Yudo's fault that the black hole was growing bigger and bigger, and that is why everyone is willing to follow Kanaz. Everyone promises that this time, if necessary, they will kill Yui. However, Kanaz reveals that she is still not sure about killing Yui, and that she does not trust Eren, but she wanted to save Naomi, and to do so, she would be willing to kill Yui. On the other side of the screen, Yudo has memories of his past, a time when he was undergoing experiments along alongside his mother. Upon waking, Yui comes across scientists who reveal that he is the savior of the world. A certain doctor says that Yudo has already undergone many experiments in his childhood and that he does not understand why Yudo does not remember. The doctor then reminds Yui again that he was a child without psychic powers, but thanks to the experiments he acquired extremely powerful powers. The doctor then says that he will dissect Yui so that his secrets will be revealed, and perhaps in the future they will be able to make all humans psionic. However, Hanabi and Spring arrive at that exact moment, and despite not knowing where Nagi is, the group decides to leave as soon as possible. On the way, several creatures appear, and knowing this, Spring says that he will fight these creatures alone and that Yui should hide with Kaido. Yui leaves the military base, and on the way out, he meets Karen, who tells him that Yui is now considered a traitor and that because of this, he should join Siren to save the world. And seeing Yui's refusal, Karen reveals that there is a place where he could take care of it. And before leaving, Karen gives Yui a medicine so that he can stay alive. So, Karen decides to help Spring, who is almost defeated by the creatures. And while Kanaz is reflecting on what is right and what is wrong, her teammate, named Kyoka, says that everyone on Kanaz's team should go to a city far from this war. Because of Yui's betrayal, government soldiers begin to attack everyone in the city in search of him. And seeing this happen, Yui becomes quite worried for the entire population. But Atara informs him that the government would not do anything too violent. Yui says that he intends to go to the remote city that Karen recommended. But before doing so, he reveals that during the minutes he was held captive by the scientists, he discovered that he was previously a normal human. But somehow, he became a Piscionian. So, since she doesn't know anything about her life yet, Yui decides to go to the remote city to get information. While Kanaz is completely frustrated by Naomi, and Kyoka and Kajiro are trying to comfort her. Kajiro then asks if Kanaz would really go to the remote city, which in this case is called Tagetsu. Kyoka then says that there is data that shows that the city of Tagetsu may very well be the origin of the collection of human brains. Kyoka then tries to convince Kanaz to go to the city of Tagetsu, and despite Kajiro trying to stop her, Kanaz ends up accepting. And at night, she goes to Naomi's room to talk to her. But Naomi just screams in pain and tells Kanaz to leave. Upon hearing this, Kanaz promises to save Naomi. Yui receives several calls from Kaido, and begins to remember when he was little and played with Kaido. However, Yui decides to refuse the call, and when he does so, he begins to feel a strong pain in his head. The next day, Spring receives a visit from Karen, and according to Spring, Karen was also aware that siding with Siren was wrong. However, Spring says he knows that Karen also wants to save his wife. Spring then remembers the day his wife joined the military force, and when he remembers, Karen starts to laugh at the strange ways she had. In response, Spring says that her turning into a monster was the worst thing that happened in his life, and hearing this, Karen leaves saying that he would do anything to save this woman. Meanwhile, Naomi is wondering what will happen to her, when suddenly, a mysterious voice says that it will save her. Having said that, Kana's group finally arrives in Tagetsu, and there, they are perplexed to discover that it always snows there. And on the way, the group is attacked by a creature with ice powers. The group quickly joins forces to destroy this creature, and after killing the monster, all the snow in that region disappears, and Kana's group finally arrives in front of the military base they were looking for. There, Kajiro says that he would not accompany them, and so he uses his power to disappear in front of everyone. At that moment, some people arrive and say that they were waiting for Kanas to arrive, since despite not remembering, Kanas was a person from that city. However, Kanas responds by saying that this is a lie, and asks these members to tell what they know about the Piscioni experiment. In response, the leader of these people says that Kanas would have to be forcibly contained in the base, and so a battle begins. In this battle, the leader ends up losing her mask, and when looking at the leader's face, Kanas comes across Kyuka, and taking advantage of this moment of fright, Kyuka takes Kanas and the others hostage. Next, Yui is also welcomed by the members of Tagetsu, and according to them, Yui is a person that everyone has been waiting for. They also say that Yui will find what he is looking for in the city. Upon entering the Tagetsu military base, Yui's group says that despite being strange, these people do not seem to have bad intentions. Yui says that even so, they should always be alert until suddenly, he arrives in a mysterious room with a type of secret file on top of a table. The Tagetsu member then leaves Yui and his team alone in this room, and there, Yui decides to open this file to discover secret information. At that moment, an image of Kyuka appears and reveals herself to be a kind of artificial intelligence that would give Yui information. This artificial intelligence then reveals that Kyuka is a child created in a laboratory. Not only that, but Kyuka is a kind of clone of a doctor from 2000 years ago. The artificial intelligence reveals that the first city was founded 2000 years ago, and was founded by the Ark Men. These Ark Men are humans who came from the moon, since at some point in history, human society ended up making Earth uninhabitable, and so humans had to take refuge on the moon. However, with the advancement of technology, humans were able to send several scientists to Earth, and all humans who exist today are descendants of the humans from the moon. The artificial intelligence says that because of the rifts that throw the monsters to Earth, no human could communicate with humanity from the moon anymore, and so it is not even possible to know if the humans from the moon are still alive. Upon learning all this, Yui asks what the creatures that attack them are. However, the artificial intelligence explains that it cannot reveal what it is, and that they will need a secret permission to be able to access this information. In response, Yui Yui asks about the black hole in the sun, and this artificial intelligence explains that the black hole was the result of a power to control spacetime called red threads, and that the main reason the black hole is growing is because Yudo is using his power, and that now the Earth's destiny is to be swallowed. Suddenly, the artificial intelligence changes the scenario, and says that this was Yui's destiny. Thus, Yui and his team leave the room, and that one of the members says that he could help Yui get the data about the creatures. To do this, Yudo would have to go to another intelligence system that has all of humanity's data, and upon learning this, Yui decides that he will follow this man. Meanwhile, the Kiguru is thinking about whether to help Kanaz or not, but when he sees a mysterious painting, the Kiguru decides to save Kanaz, since Yuka is in a room watching Yui and Kanaz, and seeing them all together. The members of the Tajetsu group say that their plan is about to be carried out. Kanaz is sleeping, and during her dream, she begins to remember that she was once in Tajetsu, since in fact she was a child made in a laboratory too, and who she thought was her mother was actually a kind of nanny who was killed by the members of Tajetsu after she was no longer of any use. Upon waking, Kanaz ends up accepting reality, and deduces that Kyuka was also a clone just like her. At that moment, 3 members of Tajetsu appear to take Kanaz, but these 3 members are knocked down out of nowhere, and at that moment the Kiguru reveals himself, and says that he will help Kanaz and Yui get out of there. Meanwhile, Yui advances to the room where the archive with all of humanity's information is. There, a member of Tajetsu leaves and says that this time, Yui will completely change his mind. So, Yui enters this room, and before opening the archives, Luca says that it seems very wrong since there was no point in Tajetsu showing so much confidential data to Yui for no reason. Upon hearing this, Yui agrees, however, he says that this is the only way to save the world, and so he opens the archive to access the information. At that moment, several data starts going into Yui's head, and receiving so much information makes him completely paralyzed. Outside, Kiguru says that the communication system was locked, and therefore, there would be no way to talk to Yui. However, a bug in Kanaz's system appears, and because of the resonance she has with Yui, she states that if she can't get Yui out of there as soon as possible, he will end up having his brain taken over by Tajetsu's people. Upon learning this, Kanaz tries to talk to Yui, and with luck, she manages to get him out of this mental trance. This way, Yui manages to get rid of the file. However, her friends are also completely paralyzed, and so, Yui cuts the file. At this moment, Kanaz explains that everyone from Tajetsu was after her and Yudo because of the red wires, and because of these Tajetsu people, Arashir and the others were trapped, and so, she asks for Yui, and the others help to save them. Thus, Luca uses all his skills to unlock all the doors in the base. However, the alarm is added, and after that, they start, and on the way, they come across several Tajetsu soldiers. When attacking these soldiers, Yudo is shocked to find that they are actually clones of Kanaz, and upon discovering this, Luca says that Kanaz is probably a child raised just like Kyuka. Outside, Kanaz's group finally reaches the exit, but on the way, Kyuka appears and says that she cannot allow Kanaz to leave Tajetsu, since Kanaz is the person who will save the world. A battle ensues and, not wanting to hurt Kyuka, Kanaz tries to convince her to return to normal. In response, Kyuka continues to attack, but by knocking Kanaz down, she manages to return to normal. At that moment, Kojiro explains that Kyuka is a clone of the doctor who lived more than 2,000 years ago in Tajetsu. In response, Kyuka explains that she had the doctor's memories, and because of that, he ended up losing his mind. Kyuka then apologizes and finally manages to say what she wanted most, which was to join Kanaz and the others and live forever with them. Hearing these words, even Arashir, who was suspicious, accepts Kyuka again. Thus, Kanaz decides that she will join Yui's group, this time with Kyuka, since everyone had already forgiven her. Everyone rushes to find Yui, and while talking to Luca, Yui explains that he felt that Kanaz wasn't a bad person, and that he knew that she wasn't the one who killed his father. At that moment, he meets up with Kanaz's squad, and thanks her for helping him get rid of the Tajetsu people. Then, Kojiro says that he would take them to a secret base so that they could talk, and upon arriving at this supposed base, Kanaz explains that she only tried to kill Yudo because she was told that there would be no future if he stayed alive. She says that Yudo's ability and hers was the ability to travel through time, and because of a resonance between their powers, the black hole had been created, and if Yui didn't die, this black hole would swallow the entire world. However, Kanaz explains that she no longer believes that, and that there must probably be a solution beyond that. Yui then says that he really felt that the hole was resonating with him. Hanabi asks if it's true that Kanaz is a child created in a laboratory, and in response Kanaz explains that she is indeed a clone child. However, no one should feel sorry for her, since she identified herself as Kanaz, Hanabi's sister, and nothing would change that. Having said that, Yui explains the situation of humanity, and even tells about the fact that there are humans on the moon. Obviously, Kanaz's entire platoon doubts it, but Kyuka says that although she can't confirm it, this information was in the database. At that moment, Kojiro says that all of this is indeed true, and seeing him say this, Kyuka says that Kojiro was in Dr. Pope's memories. Kojiro then reveals that he is a man who came from the moon, and that where they were was the ship that brought the humans from the moon to Earth. Meanwhile, in another location, Kaido is talking to himself, and says that he will finally fulfill the Sumrajai family's wish, and that to do so, he was willing to use even Yui as a tool. Karen says that this time he will not fail the world, so he will count on the help of a certain person. He also says that for his wish to be fulfilled, he is is willing to challenge anyone. This concludes the first season of the Scarlet Nexus anime. It has 24 episodes in total, and if you liked this video, leave a like and I will definitely bring you the sequel.